Awesome. All right. Alrighty, guys. So yeah, my name is Scott Wallace. I'm an environmental scientist, educator and activist. Currently studying law at Griffith University with a focus on animal law, environmental law policy, and also the emerging ecological theory of law, earth jurisprudence. So what I want to talk about today is the role of veganism in the new economy and two aspects of that. The emerging influence of veganism within the new economy and what I believe is the absolutely imperative to consider transformations towards economic systems that are based off the vegan philosophy if we're going to live in an ecologically sustainable way that is fair and just for all members of the Earth community. And so we've got here our current underlying beliefs and ideologies that underpin our systems of governance, law, culture, and economic systems are largely anthropocentric. We've heard this term thrown around in every single session today, human-centeredness, where we've seen these hierarchies in terms of our perception on the importance and value of humans and our role in the environment. So we have these human superiority, we have these hierarchies and speciesism present, where we discriminate based off an individual's membership to a particular species. The commodification of nature, we've seen non-humans as animals. We continue to treat animals as property. We fail to acknowledge that they are a someone, we treat them as a something. We refer to as companion animals as owning a dog, owning a cat. Ownership symbolizes property. And so this anthropocentrism has really been so deeply entrenched within our society and is quite pervasive in all aspects of our lives. And so one way that this anthropocentric worldview has been pervasive is really been in our exploitation and use of non-human animals. And so we're experiencing, around 60 billion land animals that are being used and exploited each year. Now, the majority of our use of animals and exploitation is for the animal agriculture industry, for our food systems. So this is a photo in Australia. This is a snapshot from a documentary called Dominion, which was released this year, based off Australia's relationship with a whole bunch of non-human animals. Please check it out. It is free to view at the moment. Now, the animal agriculture sector is having a profound effect on our environment. And in Australia, 56% of our total land is currently being used just for grazing livestock. We're concerned about land clearing and the destruction of habitat. This is where more than half of our country's land is going towards. This absolutely shocked me once I discovered this information. Mind you, after I finished my environmental science degree. Wasn't aware of this information during my studies. Now, WWF estimates that land clearing in Queensland kills about 34 million native mammals, reptiles and birds each year. The reason why we do have such a massive impact on land is because we're clearing forests to grow grass and pasture for livestock. In other areas of the world, we're clearing land to grow plant-based foods to feed to livestock, which are kept somewhere else where the land has been cleared. A very inefficient system, quite intensive in terms of land use. Please note about 3 to 4% of Australia's total land is used to grow all of our plant-based food for human consumption. So you can see where a lot of our land is going towards. Now, an example from Queensland. We're experiencing a deforestation crisis at the moment. Most of us would have heard the east coast of Australia is a global hotspot for deforestation. Now, this really concerned me. Between 2015 and 2016, we had 395,000 hectares of land cleared. This equates to the area the size of the Gabba, which is the state's, I believe, largest sporting venue, cleared every 3 minutes. Now, mining accounted for 0.75% of all that land cleared. Infrastructure, 0.5% only. Settlements accounted for 0.25% of all that land cleared. This threw and shook my understanding of the largest drivers of deforestation on its head. In that year, 93.4% of all that land cleared in Queensland was for animal agriculture, grazing, clearing land for livestock. So animal agriculture in Australia and across the world is actually the leading cause of habitat destruction. In addition to the effect on land, we are seeing a rather large contribution towards climate change. Now, the stats and facts, I've persisted for years and years to find actually what is the most accurate estimate for the contributions of the animal ag to global climate change. It's quite tricky. The models that the Australian government use under the UNFCCC framework fails to account for a lot of the land clearing and a lot of the it fails to account for a lot of the short-lived greenhouse gases like methane. Beyond zero emissions estimated that in a 20-year time frame, agriculture in Australia contributes to 54% of our nation's total greenhouse gas emissions. Mind you, this is collective agriculture. However, the animal agriculture sector forms a massive component of these emissions. I encourage you to check out all this information. The UNFAO's conservatives estimates are fairly conservative, but they are at least saying that animal ag emissions are more than the global transport sector combined. World Watch Institute estimated that around 51% of global greenhouse emissions are coming from the animal farming sector. Again, none of this stuff I was exposed to during my environmental science degree. Why isn't this information being put out there? To empower the public, empower scientists to understand really what's going on. Now, the animal farming sector, of course, is having a massive effect on the animals, on the non-human animals. Now, these statistics here are from the Australian Bureau of Statistics website, their latest update in terms of livestock products, as they refer to non-human animals as being. So in 3 months in Australia, we are slaughtering around 170 million sentient beings. This is just 3 months in this country. This is not property. These are not objects. These are sentient creatures which want to live, want to survive and thrive and exist. However, we are denying that to them. Now, for example, we've got 106,000 calves. We've got lambs, almost 5.8 million lambs slaughtered in 3 years. Our culture in this country has often revolved around the use and exploitation of animals. And as we can see here, I like to emphasize calves. 100,000 calves are being killed. The reason why this is so is because in the dairy industry, we are forcibly impregnating females to give birth to a calf, and because humans want the animal's milk, we then take the calves away, kill the calves if they're a male, keep the female calves within the dairy industry, forcibly impregnate them 4 or 5 times over, send them to the same slaughterhouse where their children have gone to. So it's a very, very brutal industry. And this industry is continuing to thrive because there is demand for these products across the globe. And now, the animal agriculture industry is an absolute ecological disaster. We're talking about the leading driver of ocean dead zones, habitat loss, species extinction, massive toll in terms of land use, water use, and of course the 56 billion animals that are slaughtered each year for this industry. Again, massive contributions to climate change. So this is something that isn't discussed enough in terms of formal spaces like this, and also informally in terms of environmental organisations putting this information out there. And it really shook me up when I was studying environmental science and still eating a heavily omnivorous diet, lots of eggs, meat and dairy. This really started getting me to question my role within and supporting these industries. And so in terms of how do we address the environmental impacts of this sector? But we really need to start shifting away from the intensive agricultural industries that we are currently supporting. And so the adoption of a plant-based vegan diet, this is a general infographic which has summarized a whole bunch of different data, but I encourage you to do your own research. There is some variation in terms of the stats and facts. This is a fairly conservative one. So plant-based vegan diet is going to be using around 1/11 of the oil. We're talking about 1/13 of the water and 1/18 of the land. And so this is this would have a very tangible effect in terms of our impact and ecological footprint on the environment where our food is coming from. And so my opinion is that the quickest, cheapest, most effective way to minimize the ecological footprint is to go vegan. I denied this to myself for many, many years, but I finally gone through enough questioning, looked at the stats and facts, and made the shift towards the adoption of a vegan philosophy as a way of life. And I feel that this is imperative in looking at shaping our new economies and moving away from systems which revolve around exploitation and use of non-human animals. Now, the United Nations has been urging for over a decade now, we need to adopt a plant-based diet if we to address the most catastrophic effects of climate change. Recently, with IPCC's latest report also focusing on animal agriculture, looking at we need to shift our consumption. This is not an old idea, it just doesn't get the exposure that I believe is imperative that it should be getting. And so we need to be looking at our consumption habits in order to minimise the effects in terms of land use, water use, pollution, and of course the effect on the animals. Cool. So it is, in theory, it's quite simple. We tell people, hey, this industry is destroying the planet, and if you're concerned about your ecological footprint and the animals and being an environmentalist, change to a plant-based vegan diet. And everyone will go, oh, Scott, thank you so much for sharing that with me. I want to go change tonight. Right? That's an ideal world, but things don't happen necessarily like that. There's a whole bunch of steps between someone providing you with information and statistics and the actual desired behavioural change that we are after for whatever our concerns about sustainability might be. And so one of the reasons why we might find this quite challenging is because of our cultural conditioning. Our society has convinced us that certain animals are more important than others. So Dr. Melanie Joy did her PhD and spent 4 or 5 years just studying the psychology of eating animals and eating meat. 5 years studying the ins and outs of the psychology. And so have you ever wondered why we love dogs, eat pigs, and wear cows? Why haven't we questioned these things? We've accepted these things as normal, natural, and necessary, and I feel it's about time we start questioning that. Because our choices have a profound effect on the environment and all the non-human animals that form the part of the Earth community which we are a part of. And so carnism is the invisible belief system or ideology that conditions us to eat certain animals. It's a reason why in Australia we consider it normal, natural to be eating cows, chickens, pigs, lambs. Other countries in Southeast Asia find it normal to be consuming dog flesh. The Japanese enjoy their consumption of whale meat. So where is the ethics and morals there? Do we take out the cultural justifications in terms of our exploitation of animals and look at it on a more objective basis? And so veganism as a lifestyle, as an adopted philosophy is really having an exponential, its growth is exponential across the world. In the US, in the UK, Canada, Australia, we're seeing some of the largest growths in terms of the vegan movement. And it's currently the largest, fastest growing social justice movement across our globe. In Australia, we have the 3rd fastest growing vegan market in the world. So in terms of looking at where is money coming from, where is the consumption trends moving towards, we are seeing massive shifts towards plant-based diet and the consumption and purchasing of products that aren't made from animals. And so these statistics are something that cannot be ignored, and it's important to consider this in terms of how we're going to be making money in the future. Murray Goulburn, which is Australia's biggest dairy producer 2 years ago, announced a 22% drop in sales. They recorded a loss of profits of $370 million, stating that a drop in consumption is one of the massive contributors to this. So people and our shift towards a plant-based diet is affecting industry in a massive way. So we are starting to shift where the money is going. And so, what do we have? So it's really shifting towards supporting industries that don't revolve around animal exploitation. And we have so many alternatives out there for the fake leather. We have all the mock meats. We have plant-based foods that are nutritious and allow us to thrive. No longer is the consumption and use of animals a necessity in any way. At least not for us in the developed society where we have supermarkets down the road. And so veganism is not only about the diet change, but also a broader philosophy where it's about non-violence towards ourselves, non-violence towards other creatures on our planet. For me, I thought veganism was quite an extreme thing. I started looking into it. And it's really an important philosophy that I think should be included if we are to develop a new economy that is just for all members of the Earth community. The best reasons we have, so if you think it's wrong to inflict unnecessary suffering on animals, then understand that taste, culture, pleasure, and convenience are not good enough excuses. So I really think it's about reconnecting to our core values of compassion, justice, and respect for the broader environment and for all members of the Earth community, and realigning our actions to reflect those beliefs. I believe everyone here considers themselves to be someone of justice and in support of compassion and cares about animals. If I was here and had a little pig in front of you and started beating it and kicking it, everyone would step in, even those who consume animal products, and would stop me from abusing that animal. Yet why do we pay people to exploit and torture animals out of our sight? we continue to support these industries. They treat animals in an absolute horrendous way. Our legal system upholds these systems of exploitation. And so that is my case today in terms of the imperative of considering veganism within the new economy. I think it's so important to really move out from our human-centered worldview and start looking at, bringing in principles of earth jurisprudence, moving away from nature as property and as a commodity. And we can do this with every single choice we make when we live our days, the food we purchase and the products we consume. So if anyone is interested in following some of the work I'm doing, I'd love to connect with you. I've got some content on YouTube. If you search on social media or Instagram at Earth Centered, I've got some stuff there. I'd love to connect, and thank you guys for your attention.
Great. Thanks very much, Scott. Certainly raised some pretty powerful and important questions, and this is why food is so essential to this whole discussion. I think Scott's made that case abundantly clear. The question of diet and what we eat is actually, really fundamentally important in terms of how we're going to continue to inhabit this planet. So.